Welcome to the We Grow Ours show with your hosts, Nick Klein and Don Cupper.
We discuss everything from politics to planting. Live food storage is our passion, and we want to share our passion with you.
We cover techniques, methods, and tips to not only survive, but thrive.
Join us at WeGrowOurs.com and get your grow on. So welcome to this week's episode number 2 of We Grow Ours. I'm Don Cupper.
And I'm Nick Klein, and this week we're going to be talking with Carl, and he is awesome. He runs 2 websites, compostmania.com and biopod.com. Or is it
Biopod.com as well as protoculture.com. So he is our resident black soldier fly expert. I've been doing business with them for a while. We've sold a lot of biopod pluses, as he calls them, the baby pod. I can't manage to say that. It's a tongue twister for me. Biopod plus. I don't know why, but he's going to teach us about black soldier flies. We've had a few requests online to cover black soldier flies. So this is it. Episode number 2, black soldier flies. What else do we have on store for today? What about the upcoming Homesteaders Conference? We're going to touch a little bit on that.
Yes, we'll go over some of the things that we're going to be teaching at that event.
I'm excited about that event. I'm a teacher there. Nick is a teacher there. We're kind of putting it on, so I guess we're teachers by default. But we've got some really cool people coming. What's the gentleman's name that does the backyard planning and the chickens?
Yes, that's actually, hopefully he'll be a guest of ours on this show. We have Justin Rohner, who is the...
Agriscaping, right?
Yes, that's right. He owns Agriscaping, and this is not his only venture. He's pretty awesome businessman. He's been... quote unquote around the block when it comes to business. He's played in a few other fields, not just in the sustainable food supply. That's his current interest. He's really interested in, he's actually an expert in backyard chicken raising. So,
yeah, you were telling me a little bit about that. He knows how to quiet chickens down and keep them, we don't condone keeping them we do, but some government agencies may not condone having backyard chickens. Homeowners associations here in Phoenix don't allow it for the most part.
Exactly. The Nazi curb control. HOAs are not real chicken friendly. Justin has figured out a way to provide the chickens with housing and a coop that is designed to keep them quiet, not just to muffle their sound, but to actually get into the psyche of the chicken, if you will.
Yeah. He's like Caesar Milan for chickens.
I don't know who Caesar Milan is,
but... come on. He's the dog guy.
Oh, the dog whisperer? Is that what it is?
I don't know. My wife watches it. It's pretty cool. He takes all these aggressive dogs and calms them down and, talks to them. It's pretty neat. So anyway, I think that's a little off topic. All right, today we are here with Carl from Compost Mania and protoculture.com. Carl, how are you today?
Good evening, Don. Thank you so much for the invitation to speak.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you on. You are our resident expert on black soldier flies. So tell me a little bit about your company, who you are, what you do, and then let's get into the black soldier flies and what we can use those for.
Absolutely. Don, my company is called Protoculture. We are originally based in Texas. We have recently moved our facility to North Carolina where production occurs as well as distribution. We have a research division of the company, which is completely situated in Hawaii, and it allows us to do year-round research and growth. That is where my boss is located. I'm in charge of all the sales, marketing, and distribution, not only for the U.S., but also international. And we have 2 internet presence. We have the biopod.com, which has information on the pods, and compostmania.com, which is our retail division, which also promotes other things like gardening and composting, obvious from the name. We have existed for about 10 years. We originally were from a Belgian company that allowed us to spin off several years ago. That Belgian company dealt with recycling, and we were sort of the organic recycling division of that firm. We spun off and became our wholly owned subsidiary, and now it's an independent company. We deal primarily with recycling of organic waste. That is how we started. There was a problem in Europe with contamination of recyclables, because they didn't know what to do with a lot of the organics. So this sort of became that solution, and the technologies arose from that idea to somehow get rid of the organic waste component of trash and divert it so that the rest of the trash was more pleasant to recycle. And and that's how it actually started. So we actually started as a way to divert and recycle organic waste. And we have morphed into technology that produces feed for chickens and fish. But it does the same thing. Not only does it do a great end product, it has a great environmental benefit, which is to keep this stuff out of landfills.
Gotcha. Now, I'm looking at your Compost Mania website, and I see, I know I have you on to talk about black soldier flies, but it looks like you guys have compost tea brewers, you do worm bins, pet waste disposal. So you're actually into the composting in general, not just black soldier flies. Is that correct?
Correct. We're into all types of bioconversion, whether the bioconversion uses microbes in compost bins, whether it uses fungi in mushroom kits, whether it uses redworms in vermiculture systems. We're all about bioconversion and using nature to do the work that we neglect to do.
Great. What are the websites again? I've got Compost Mania. What are your other websites?
Compostmania.com, Facebook/composting. That's pretty easy. Facebook/composting. And then, of course, thebiopod.com.
Thebiopod.com.
Yes.
Okay, so let me ask you a little bit about black soldier flies. Nick and I believe that black soldier flies are one of the keys to integration. As you know, I do aquaponics. Nick is a rabbit guy, so he produces a lot of rabbit waste.
Well, I don't produce it. I blame that on the bunnies. At one point, I figured I was producing around 300 pounds of rabbit manure every other day. So, I had it drying out in screens, trying to get the moisture down in it, and then would bag it up and sell it to landscapers that didn't really understand that it wasn't a ground pellet, and it ended up being a mess. Not because it's messy per se, but there was just a lot more being produced than what I could get rid of.
So one of the things that we found is that we can use black soldier flies for composting rabbit waste. Can you tell us a bit about black soldier flies, kind of their lifespan, the numbers, maybe why someone would want to use black soldier flies? I know there's a lot of things other than integration. You mentioned fish food, quail food, chicken food. What have you found in your years of experience with black soldier flies? And, tell us a little bit about why we should have these.
Okay, let me talk a little bit about the species first. This is a native insect to North America, primarily the southern states. And when I say southern, I'm talking about zone 7 and up. You can find it sporadically in warmer areas of zone 6, but cooler than that, it's going to be quite uncommon. The desert southwest, as you probably guessed, just like most insects, are not present in some of the hotter areas. But any area zone 7 and up, you're going to find natural populations. Though the species is quite diverse in North America and distributed, there are subspecies characteristics. So the black soldier flies you find in Seattle are not identical to the ones you find in Key West, which are not identical to the ones you find in Flagstaff. They all sort of have adaptive genetic characteristics that have evolved over time in their local regions. So I always try to tell people, when you start black soldier fly colonies, do everything you can to attract the local populations, because they're going to do the best. We sell kits online, and we'd love to sell you kits, but we prefer you to establish populations from local individuals. It does better, and the technology that we've manufactured will perform better if you have those genetic characteristics. So let me start by saying that. Also, this species is different than houseflies, different than fruit flies. It has a completely different life cycle, even though it is a fly. You don't have to worry about pathogens because it is not a vector. It doesn't feed as an adult. And because of that, it's not going to go hopping from buffet to smorgasbord to garbage can to backyard picnic, transmitting disease from place to place. It doesn't feed as an adult. It doesn't do that. All it's interested in doing is reproducing and laying eggs. And because of that feature, you don't have to worry as much by breeding these and having these present in your garden. You can feel safer about that. I'm not going to say that no pathogens are present. Just like any food scraps can harbor bad germs. Those bad germs then get introduced into the colony and could stay there. So you don't necessarily want to raise these with open wounds any more than you'd want to put open wounds in a compost bin or a worm bin. But you just have to be vigilant. But in regards to overall pathogen issues, it's so much less than other species of flies. And that's a really nice attribute about this insect.
That's one of the things that I found I liked about them. They seem cleaner than other things. Now, it sounds to me like most flies are actually eating off of the rotting material. Is that right, Nick?
Yeah, they're actually eating the bacteria that's growing on the rotting food, whereas the soldier flies, is it true that they want to eat the freshest food that's available?
They do eat fresh fruits. They do have very powerful digestive enzymes. They don't have to wait till the bacteria and microbes break down the food scrap before they can consume it. They can do it directly, which is why in 8 to 10 hours the bulk of the food is gone, because they're doing the eating and consuming. And that's another absolute great feature about this. It is very quickly. They're almost like the piranhas of the insect world.
Nice. I'm going to post a video in our show notes, too, that I came across of, and it's in a Biopod Plus. It's 2 trout, a full-size cooked trout and then a raw trout. And I believe it's 12 hours, and the black soldier fly colony has this things down to nothing. So I'll put that in the show notes. Have you seen that video, Carl?
Yeah, that's an excellent video. Obviously, foods that are cooked are easier to consume and digest because they're softer, and the harder components of it have been reduced in structural integrity, so they're just easier to eat and digest. But as you can see, they'll digest and eat raw foods just as happily.
So a lot of people listening to us are into aquaponics. They're into rabbits and quail. Tell me a little bit about the breeding schedule, the lifespan, and then also a little bit about the Biopod and the Biopod Plus. What's the difference with those? What numbers are you looking at? How much waste can they compost? What are we looking at for an output in those?
Okay, the life cycle is pretty straightforward. It goes from egg to larva to prepupa to pupa adult, and all of that can happen in about 3 weeks. The egg and egg laying only takes a couple days. The main interest that most people have is in the grub or the larva life cycle. That's what's going to consume. It goes through several instars of growth, and in under 3 weeks you can get it to full maturity. The great thing about this species is when it reaches the last instar, there's a color change from cream to dark charcoal gray. And that signifies that it is at the final instar and is ready to crawl off and go settle somewhere will then pupate. We take advantage of that color change by allowing for separation in our technologies. How that is accomplished is we take advantage of a natural tendency that this species has to migrate out and away from the food it's eating into an area away from that. Our patented ramp technologies that are built in help incentivize them to crawl off and migrate, and therefore can be easily collected. Very difficult to separate other types of arthropods from their active pile, such as redworms. You have to go through many iterations, and with this species, the fact that it auto-harvests and auto-collects for you at the point where it's the largest, it is a really great benefit, and it's what we take advantage of. Both of our units have that.
Carl, you just made a lazy man smile over here. I like that self-harvesting. That's the way to go. Quick question.
Oh, I'm all about lazy gardening.
Oh, yeah. Quick question for you. Let's say we buy one of your biopods. We've got it set up there. We've got food in there for the soldier flies, black soldier flies. And how do we get the local black soldier flies to be attracted to what we're selling without all the other houseflies showing up? Is there some tricks to the trade to get the local species to show up?
Well, the local species is attracted to putrescent waste, or basically fresh, ripe food scraps. They seem to have a real interest in things like mildly fermenting corn, coffee grounds, melons, overripe fruit. They really, really seem to pick up on those and detect those odors. When I start a unit, I mix in some fermented corn that's been sitting out for a day or two with some coffee grounds. I usually start it also with some ripe melons, but also soaked stale pet kibble. Now, I don't use fresh foods. I use foods that are going to be discarded. It doesn't make sense to feed them fresh foods when you can feed yourself fresh foods. You always want to make sure that you're doing food scraps, but those are part of most common diets. And especially if you're eating healthy and you should be having those things in your diet, it's easy to start them off with items like that. Now, in regards to the house flies and fruit flies, for the first 1 to 2 weeks, those flies tend to appear because the black soldier fly life cycle is shorter. So you're going to get the other two species being attracted to the food scraps as well, and they're going to start populating. There are ways to mitigate that. If you want to go into it, I'd be happy to help you with those tips. But after about 2.5 weeks, the black soldier flies start to dominate, crowd out those other species, and basically inhibit their presence for the rest of the warm months. And as long as you maintain aerobic conditions, you tend to not see the other species of flies, which is really a great way to make sure that you're maintaining your colony, is maintaining aerobic conditions. Anaerobic conditions, the house flies like. Aerobic conditions, black soldier fly likes. So you want to make sure to maintain the aerobic conditions, and you'll maintain. And I personally think there are some type of chemicals that the black soldier fly releases, or that the microbes that are associated with the black soldier fly release, that inhibit the other species of flies. And it makes sense from a dominant type standpoint in the food chain, but we don't really know why the other flies disappear.
Wow. Yeah, I know in my colony, I've gotten them started. I usually cheat and purchase some, because I don't have the patience, the 1 to 2 weeks, the 2 to 3 weeks. But what I have noticed is the species generally do change a little bit. I can tell that we're getting the local ones in too, because I'll find them in other areas close to me where I hadn't seen them in the past, like down near my compost pile. So I don't know if it's the compost pile that's helping bring them in, or if it's having the aerobic conditions in the biopod that brings them to the composter. But I do see that I find more of them in the area. Out here in Arizona, we have some temperature limitations. So what's the best temperature to keep your biopod?
70 to 110 is the range. Optimally, 80 to 100, I think, is probably the best, but they can go cooler. I know that the ambient air temperature can get much lower as long as you're feeding the colony. They give off a lot of heat because the digestion is exothermic. So the colony could be 80 degrees even though the air temperatures are 60. So air temperature is not necessarily a critical factor. It is for flying adult life cycle, but not for the grubs themselves. They'll keep it warm, which is a great another attribute of the species. But I've personally noticed that over 110, they start crawling off when they're immature. So the younger instars, the cream-colored ones, start to show up in your collection bucket. It's kind of an indication that there's too much heat, and it's a great way to sort of know that your unit's heating up too much. And you can cut back on the food scraps. You can put in a couple Ziplocs of ice bags, or the chill packs that they put in lunch boxes.
Right.
Throw some of those in. That'll cool the temperature down pretty quick. You just don't want to drop the temperature too much where it makes the colony go dormant.
So once I have my healthy biopod or biopod plus, what am I looking at as far as the numbers? How many of these things? How much food can I raise for my fish or my chickens?
Great question. The bioconversion rate of this species varies. It can go up to about 25%, which means if you're looking at 100 pounds of food scraps, ideally you could probably get about 25 pounds of mature prepupa, which is the last instar of the life cycle. I say it prepupa, even though it's scientific, just think of the black grub.
Gotcha.
25% is a little optimal and a little bit higher than we get in real-life testing, it's more around 18 to 22%. If you want to average that out, 20% or 1/5. So for every 100 pounds of food scraps, anticipate about 20 pounds of mature grubs. That is on mixed food scraps. That's where those numbers come from. You can't expect to feed them celery and cilantro and expect 20%. They need caloric food. So mixed food scraps tend to be very high in calories, and they grow fat and plump and fast. But they're not going to do it unless you give them caloric food scraps.
Okay.
So keep that in mind when you're throwing mixed waste in there. It can't just be, low calorie biomass that's from the garden. They don't tend to particularly like high lignin foods. They're not going to eat things like pits or shells. And that goes without question on things like oysters and chitin. They can't consume it. They don't have the digestive enzymes. Now, would the microbes help with that? Probably, but it's going to take a little longer for those things to disappear. Some of it never will.
Right.
In regards to other bioconversions besides food scraps, feces, or I should say poop from different animals, can vary from 10 to 20% depending on the type of animal. We notice herbivores is a much lower bioconversion than omnivores. So pig poop has a much higher bioconversion rate than, let's say, cow poop. Pets are higher because they're omnivores. Carnivores actually have very high bioconversion. Rabbits is kind of in the middle. I would say that's kind of on the low side. But will it still consume it? Yes, you just get less grubs.
And we can supplement the food with it as well, right? I mean, you can mix.
Absolutely. If you mix it, you're going to get higher levels of bioconversion.
How much does the biopod and the biopod I can't say that today for some reason, Carl. The Biopod Plus, that tongue twister, how much food can I put in that? And what are the models that you guys offer that we can utilize?
We have a baby pod and we have a larger pod. The baby pod is called Biopod Plus. It's hard to remember. I just tell people it's baby pod. Bigger one, just say the large pod. It's called the protopod. They're hard names to remember. Baby pod, large pod, that's fine. The baby pod can handle about 4 to 5 pounds of food scraps a day. The bigger, large pod, it's about 20 to 25 pounds of food scraps a day. Obviously, if they're not eating everything within a day or two, you want to pull back on the food. If they're eating all of it and they seem like they're starving, you could probably bump it up. The most critical thing that I tell people is make sure that you have drainage occurring constantly, that you empty the drainage if you're collecting it or have it open at all times, and making sure that there's no anaerobic odor detected. If there is, you want to break up those clumps with a little, like garden claw or fork and fluff it up, because the best battle against anaerobic condition is air and oxygen, and that helps to break it up and mitigate that very quickly. So you want to fluff up your pod if you detect odor. That means there's some stagnant pocket somewhere.
Would you recommend throwing an air stone or something in there that would add oxygen to the pod, or is it pretty good at allowing air in?
I wouldn't recommend keeping your pod that soupy where you need an aeration stone. Maybe an aeration bar or a tube that has many holes that sort of just aerates the whole thing may be helpful, but I just tell people to keep it fluffed. And if you keep it fluffed, and when I say fluffed, I mean sort of just churned up a little bit, I always have bags of shredded office paper or shredded cardboard. So I have a cardboard shredder. And when I have too soupy of a mixture, I throw that in and it absorbs some of the moisture, but it also lightens the matrix and makes it more fluffy. And that seems to keep the aerobic conditions stable. That is the biggest problem with black soldier fly colonies is anaerobic conditions developing, because they're such voracious eaters that it's easy to have these little sediment pockets of just dense matter that go anaerobic, and you have to try to prevent that happening at all times. Fluffing once a day seems to help my particular pods when I've managed them.
Now, you mentioned cardboard. I know in my unit, in the baby pod, which I can say, I have some corrugated cardboard in there, and I try to keep that fairly moist, actually. And I find that all of them seem to lay their eggs in there. The adults will come back in and lay the eggs. Can you give us some tips or tricks to kind of keep those numbers up and keep them coming back?
Yes. I'm going to talk first to the areas that have black soldier fly present in the environment because it's much easier. We design the units so that they can run constantly in the warmer months in areas where have black soldier fly. You don't need any particular augmentation or devices to help with the egg laying. Now, that being said, there are a couple little tricks you can do. I know that this is very common. People take strips of corrugated cardboard and cut it so that the whole side of the cardboard with the holes, is on the long side, and so that there's all these little crevices on a 1x4 inch strip. So 1 inch wide, 4 inches long, and people Elmer's glue maybe 4 to 5 of those in a stack, let it dry, and Velcro that to the underside of the lid or to the wall. The black soldier fly really like laying eggs on cardboard, and it will help augment that. But also what it will do is if you have that in an operating pod and you open it up and you see tons of egg cases in your cardboard, and let's say you're about to start a new pod, well, you just unvelcro that from that pod and you take it over and Velcro it back to the new pod.
Oh, that's a wonderful idea.
And you all of a sudden have an enormous number of larvae that are going to drop into that pod, and that was pretty easy to do. So it's a great way of starting off new pods, but it's also going to magnify your pod, and it's very easy to do. Everybody has access to old boxes.
Great. So anything else that we didn't touch on that you think people should know about Compost Mania, about protoculture, or about the biopods?
In regards to operations, I would keep these in full shade because the sun's going to heat them up, and it could go over the 110 maximum that causes stress. The protopods were designed and developed without a lid, and because of that, rainfall could flood the units. And I always tell people to operate these in an area that has not only a canopy that covers it from sun, but also protects it from rainfall. The BioPod Plus, the baby pod, can be outdoors because rain can't get in. The only other thing I remind people is making sure they stay aerobic, because anaerobic conditions tend to be a primary cause of collapsing pods where the colony collapsed. So you want to try to maintain aerobic conditions as much as possible. There is a signature odor associated with fully operational and functioning pods. And it's hard to explain until you own pods, but it is a smell when I'm walking up to a pod that I know is functioning when I smell that odor. And it's not a bad odor, it's just a signature black soldier fly odor. And you'll start to learn that odor, and you'll know that it's operating correctly when you detect it. And then when you detect other odors, you know something's up. So there is a sniff test with black soldier fly operations. And if you've ever owned bees, you'll know that there's definite odors with them too.
Right. I can smell mine, and if it does start getting off, I certainly notice a difference in the smell. It's almost a very sweet smell to me. And I think that changes with what we feed them. We do feed them a lot of coffee grinds. I take my coffee grinds and empty that in, along with some fruit and things. And I certainly can notice the smell. It is not a bad smell at all, though.
No, it's not. I guess the only other take-home point about black soldier fly rearing is, you don't need to purchase our technologies to do this. I mean, you could go to ecopodsgardens.com and purchase a unit. It'll make your life immensely easier because our technology allows you to be lazy and allows them to work on autopilot. But you can do this, with a 5-gallon bucket. You just have to do a lot of infrastructure enhancements. It might not be worth your time. If you're in a budget, then I'd rather you still try this out just so you understand the life cycle. And then when come into some funds, then purchase something to make your life easier.
Yeah, I love your units. Like you said, they're auto-harvesting, and I got Nick over here laughing. They're auto-harvesting, and I'm a lazy guy, so the biopods are great for that.
Well, if you're a homesteader, you're busy doing 5,000 other things. And I guess the only other question I didn't answer is why people should do this. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be tied to Tractor Supply to buy my feed for my animals. I want to be able to grow a portion of my feed that is highly nutritious on my farm without any extra purchased inputs.
Amen to that.
produce an enormous amount of food scraps. If it doesn't go to me, then it doesn't go to my animals. It's going to go to my grubs or my worms, and they're going to transform it into usable feed for my pets, my aquaponic systems, and of course all my poultry.
Well, here's a question for you. Do you know offhand what the nutritional value is of the black soldier fly?
I do. It is extremely nutritious when it comes to healthy fats, and it has a high protein signature. There's certain other important characteristics like lauric acid, which is extremely healthy, which is a fatty acid. So impressive calcium content, and you know how important calcium is for proper egg laying. And a lot of the reptile enthusiasts love the calcium levels with black soldier fly. So you see a lot of people who raise herps buying these technologies. So it's not necessarily just homesteaders. It's also people who have exotic animals too.
It's a great barter tool for homesteaders too. I mean, you can take, even at a small 10% conversion, how much waste did you say your rabbits produced?
Well, I'd be producing 30 to 50 pounds of black soldier flies a day off of black soldier fly larvae per day off of the waste that what I had.
I mean, you could have a little side business just selling these to the reptile people out there, because you can't find these in the stores, at least around us. You can't go into a PetSmart and find these things. So I bet you'd have an industry around black soldier flies themselves. And as we said, it's a key to integration. You had mentioned growing your own food. Between fodder and between black soldier flies, we get to that net zero cost. So, Carl, it's wonderful having you. I really appreciate all the time you've spent with us.
Yeah, Carl, thank you so much. And we really appreciate having you on the show and filling us in on all of this stuff. And I'll tell you, I'm going to be getting online and getting one of your systems here shortly.
Well, I appreciate the invitation. If people have operational questions, we're here to assist in any way possible. We want people to be successful because we want them to tell their friends and colleagues about the technology. They can email me at Carl, K-A-R-L, at protoculture.com, and I'd be happy to answer any inquiries that they have. And again, ecopodgardens.com sells our technology. You can purchase it there. And if you have any other questions, you could either ask Don or myself, and we'd be happy to assist.
Great. Thank you so much, Carl.
All right. Take care.
Thank you, Carl, for educating us on black soldier flies. Nick, I know you've got a little bit more to say about black soldier flies.
Well, I see that, when Don and I first got together and talked about what we wanted to do with We Grow Ours before We Grow Ours was actually coming into fruition, my goal was to have a net zero system.
Right. We talked about fodder.
That's right. Fodder. The black soldier flies are a major staple in this because they help convert what goes to waste normally into food for two different animals in the system. Obviously, rabbits do not feed on grubs, but if you have rabbits, the waste from the rabbits can be fed to the BSF, or the black soldier fly larva. Then the black soldier fly larva can be harvested and fed to your quail and to your ducks and to your fish. And anything that's omnivorous, any fowl or fish would be very happy to eat black soldier fly larvae.
Yeah, we talked about the content of the black soldier. I think the protein levels, I don't know if Carl actually said that, is about 40%
I've
from
heard,
the research I've done.
I've heard varying points on that.
Probably depending on what you're eating, or feeding them, not what you're eating, what they're eating.
If you're feeding them what you're feeding them.
Yeah, they don't like Twix bars. So... yeah, you're right. It can take the waste. So we now take waste out of the picture. We can produce black soldier flies. Like I said, I wouldn't use complete rabbit poop in the system.
No, it's not exactly a balanced diet. But what he was saying, what Carl made mention, he said that he's using office paper that's shredded.
Right.
I happen to have a little bit of experience with office paper. It used to be that office paper was whitened with fluoride. Well, thankfully not fluoride, formaldehyde. Thankfully, that's no longer the practice. Now they use calcium that wreaks havoc on your copy machine, but the calcium that's in there that causes the paper to be white is now transferred to whatever eats it.
Yeah, so be careful, I think, right?
You could be careful, but if you're increasing the calcium content of these black soldier fly, you're then passing it on to your fish and your chickens and your fowl that need to lay eggs, and eventually into the system to be absorbed by plants as well.
Nice. And we use chicken eggs for stuff like that. So, I mean, putting calcium in is necessary and needed. And not just the rabbit poop and I wouldn't use the quail or the chicken poop for this.
No, but like he said, that's a little bit hot.
Yeah, it gets hot. But with the rabbit poop, remember, we're raising these rabbits for meat.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get that meat, there are leftovers.
Oh, yeah.
There is no reason not to use the carcass, the leftovers. If you're deboning, throw them in. They may not eat the bones. You can pull them out the next day, though, and they'll clean the bones for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So that's high quality protein right there that would normally go to waste. Whatever you're cooking it with, veggies you can give to them, things like potatoes, fruits they love. If you're just eating lettuce, I wouldn't be doing that. But he had also, actually, I don't know if he mentioned it on the interview, but one of the things that I've talked to Carl about in the past was duckweed.
Yes, duckweed. For those that don't know, duckweed is around 40% protein. It smells a little funny when you're pulling it off the water, but I believe it absorbs ammonia, does it not?
Yeah, I believe it does.
So it's a plant that likes straight ammonia, whereas other plants, they tend to be better off absorbing the nitrates instead of nitrites and ammonia.
Yeah, I know when I do my duckweed tanks in my aquaponics system, I'm generally hooking it up directly to the fish tank and using the water direct from the fish tank. So that may contain more ammonia. Now, sometimes we do it further down the line after filtering, and duckweed grows great there too. You don't want a ton of water movement in it, but the stuff grows great. You can feed it to the black soldier flies. You can feed it to your ducks, to your chickens, to your quail. You've got that high quality protein. So it's one of those keys to integration. Black soldier flies, fodder systems, duckweed. It all goes together. So, Carl, again, thanks for coming on. Awesome.
Awesome. Very well. Very well. Very well said. Good way to wrap it up. One word. Awesome.
Awesome.
So, I don't know if we've mentioned this prior, but coming up in this April of 2014, we're going to have the first homesteading conference put on by We Grow Ours.
That's right. The Backyard Homesteading Conference, April 5th and 6th. This is going to be cool. I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Nick and I are teachers, but we've got some other ones we talked about.
That's right. Justin Rohner is going to be in there, and he is going to be a treat. He's not only teaching how to tame your chickens and make them backyard friendly, but also going to be talking about urban homesteading planning. Whether you've got an apartment with a little patch of grass or a condo up to your large acreage places, Justin is an expert in maximizing your land.
So, homestead planning and design course, aquaponics, rabbits, the perfect urban livestock, rabbit and quail processing demonstration.
Oh yeah, you're going to see a little bit of carnage. I'm going to get my blood on.
Nice. Backyard chicken farming, quail, gardening, and composting. And there's going to be a lot of time in there to network with the other people. We want you guys to get together. This is a movement. We call it backyard farming revival. Back to the...
I say hallelujah.
I like the World War II, the Victory Gardens. I've got those Victory Garden posters at my house, and
those
I
are
collect
cool.
those. So this reminds me of that. Get back to that Victory Garden. We're going to talk about this HOAs, city codes with that, quail. This is really geared around... you can do this in an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
1/20th of an acre, 5 acres, 10 acres.
Yeah, if you've got dirt, in fact, actually, if you don't have dirt, Don here will hook you up with an aquaponics system. You'd be inside your apartment growing tomatoes.
Yeah, we'll integrate the quail.
Exactly.
Integrate the black soldier flies on your patio in your apartment. So you guys, you do not need land for this. A single car garage can feed a family of 5.
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned it last go around, but I have a guy that is pretty cool. He's got a bunch of carpet pythons, and his bill every month for producing the rabbits to feed them was just astronomical. So I told him that a system that could feed all of his animals would only cost him so much and take up so much space, and he dedicated a room in his apartment to raising rabbits. He's able to feed all of his snakes off of that, and I believe his maximum output is 1,200 pounds of rabbit per year.
That's a lot of rabbit.
Out of his apartment. Now, if you remember from last episode, we talked about how much rabbit you need. You only need about 215 pounds of rabbit meat to keep you alive per year. So you can feed 4 people with that easily. Right.
So he's got, what, 4 or 5 does?
I believe he has 6.
6?
No, hold on a second. Let me do the math here. 215. Yeah, he's got 5, 6.
So you're talking processed
yes.
rabbit? Because I didn't think you'd be processing them with that.
No, he's not.
Just,
yeah. I'm sorry. The math was a little bit off there. So it's...
Oh, wow. I did the math faster than the rabbit guy. No, that's awesome. I know Scott Yarish right. Homestead. He does quail. That's where I got started with quail. I think, Nick, did you get started with quail from Scott?
No, I actually buy from him. I've got I buy them in bulk. I'm killing the quail and freezing them and selling them to falconers.
It's so politically correct. You're killing them. You're processing.
No, because I straight up put them in a gas chamber and kill their feathered butts.
Nice. So anyway, Scott is going to be teaching quail. Yes. You're going to be demoing rabbit and quail processing.
That's correct.
So
I will be probably doing in 2 or 3 rabbits and 2 or 3 quail just to give you guys the idea of how easy it is and how quick it can be done. Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun.
All right. Thank you for joining We Grow Ours episode 2. I want to wrap up the show with some thoughts here. WeGrowOurs.com. You can check out the homesteading conference. Be sure you guys check out the show notes. So I've got the video that I'm going to be posting with the black soldier flies, with those trout I think I had mentioned. Phenomenal video. I've watched it over and over again. This is the coolest thing. Live, full trouts in these things. 12 hours, I think was the video.
12 or 24.
12 or 24. Remember. Either way, it's phenomenal that you can throw 2 full-size fish in here and these black soldier flies just gnaw at it.
They
get
it's gone. Decimated. It is awesome. Total carnage.
So make sure you check out the show notes on that. I don't think we did our random plug of the week yet. I've got to do the random plug of the week. All right, this week's random plug of the week. I am actually going to throw some props out there to the Podcast Answer Man. podcastanswerman.com. Cliff, I believe Cliff Ratfield is his name. And go check out his podcast at Podcast Answer Man. If you guys have ever thought about podcasting, this is the man to go to. He has helped me tremendously get started. His equipment recommendations, just phenomenal. And without him, Nick and I wouldn't be able to do this. We try to bring you the highest quality we can on the tightest budget we can, because I think we've mentioned this, but I'm cheap. What about you?
Oh, yeah, I'm a cheap guy.
So with that said, Cliff, the Podcast Answer Man, is our random plug of the week. Make sure you also listen to the show. We do a little bit of fade out music, and then there's a special message usually at the end of the shows. Maybe disclaimers, public service, So we're going to keep doing that. We got a lot of feedback on that. Go to WeGrowOurs.com, click the Ask Us button, record your messages, record your questions, get featured on the podcast. If you guys have any subjects that you want to hear about, anything to do with urban farming, survival, prepping, I had actually a really good question before we wrap up the show. One of my friends, Christian, had listened to the podcast. He called me up last. He says, "Hey, I listened to the first episode. I thought it was going to be horrible, but I loved it." So he wasn't trying to be insulting. He was actually giving me some great feedback on the show.
My expectations were low, but you superseded them immensely.
Exactly.
Congratulations with the backhanded compliment.
No, I am so glad he called, because he says, I'm not into survival. I'm not into prepping. I'm not even into urban farming. And he really enjoyed the show. One of the things he asked me was, he said, I've got one question about aquaponics. If we're doing this, does it require a pump? No. Well, yes. But does it require electricity? I think was a more important question. And the answer is yes and no. It requires a pump. Now, we can do that solar. And we're going to talk more about solar on the show too.
Yes. In fact, one of the things that looking at a survival situation, if you're in a grid down, which is no power situation, electric pumps aren't going to work unless you have a solar panel on them. But that being said, you could easily rig up a hoisting mechanism so that you had 2 drain tanks. Ooh. One could fill up all day long slowly, and then when it hit the end of its cycle, you could easily hoist the second one up and lower the first one and have it drain back.
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought of that, Nick. That's a really good idea. So aquaponics can be done in a survival situation. And, where my mind went was, besides solar, is you with your biofuels and your gasification. We're producing rabbit waste. We're producing all this other waste. Hopefully you guys have stuff around to burn to keep warm. Well, we could also use gasification as a form of power for aquaponics.
Exactly. The idea is gasification uses biomass to heat up other biomass to release hydrocarbons that can then run an internal combustion engine. And
a generator.
A generator, exactly. Or a pump.
Or a pump.
Or anything or a vehicle. Whatever you want to run. Anything that runs on gasoline can be modified to run on synthetic gas or producer gas, which is what you produce out of gasification. So, honestly, there's nothing that will hold you back in a grid down situation if you are prepared to use an engine that is modified for gasification, or that same engine that's modified for gasification can also accept methane produced through anaerobic digestion.
Right, and we do that as well. I've gotten into that a little bit. So collecting methane, I've never figured out what to do with it, but
I usually use it in a very medieval looking flamethrower that I built out of some random copper pipes. And it's pretty awesome.
So you ready to do a show on these fuels and gasification and all?
Definitely.
Well, maybe we'll put that at number 3 or 4 here. We'll have to talk and devote one of our podcasts to that. So thank you.
Hey, thank you guys for listening, and we'll look forward to talking with you again next week.
More editing.
Put it on my tab.
Yeah. All right. So we are recording.
Oh, we are?
Just now.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. We're going to talk about how awesome stuff is. And then I do the dirty and kill them and do the dirty. That's probably not good. We edit that crap out.
Give me more stuff to edit with.
Attention marijuana users, potheads, and stoners. We Grow Ours is not dedicated to the growing of yours, quote unquote. So please disregard any messages here. But if you want to contribute to society, start growing yours, as in your food, as in your munchies, as in just get off the weed.
The opinions of Nick Klein on We Grow Ours do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Don Cupper. If you want to grow your own marijuana, feel free, as long as it's legal in your state.